Year-old boy attending middle school in Middleborough, Massachusetts, was sent home from school recently for wearing a T-shirt which teachers complained made some students feel unsafe. The shirt that Liam Morrison wore looked like this one, with 5 words: "There are only 2 genders." Liam recently told the school board that he refused to remove the shirt because he was only stating facts.
I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? Are their feelings more important than my rights?
All right, folks, well, I just got back from my appearance on Tim Pool, so before I begin today's video, I do want to say thank you to everyone who tuned into that. Thank you to all of the new subscribers who came over to our channel from that, and of course, thank you to Tim and his team for inviting me on. It was certainly a great time. With that said, folks, today, we have to react to probably my favorite story that we missed the past few days, which is that high school walkouts are back. And you're probably saying, Vince, what do you mean your favorite story? The last time high schoolers walked out of class to protest against political causes or for political causes, it was about climate change. It was about gun control. Why are you celebrating the fact that Gen Z is now once again protesting politically? Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because perhaps, and as a point I will make today, perhaps our generation actually is not as liberal and the tides are turning in a way that people don't really realize. Perhaps you're starting to see the pendulum, especially in the younger ends of the younger generations, right? The people still in high school or the people who just got to college, starting to shift in the other direction. And the reason I bring that up is because today we have to react to this story of hundreds of high school kids walking out in Pennsylvania, not to protest about climate change, not to protest about Black Lives Matter, but to protest against boys using girls' bathrooms, right? To protest against the insane left-wing gender policies that are being shoved down their throats. We're very often told that this is a parents' issue, right? The parents are protesting. No, turns out actually the kids are protesting as well. Let's take a look here at the video. Here's the sights and sounds of the real American patriot kids walking out in Pennsylvania. Check it out. So there they are. Respect girls' rights. That's what one of the boys' signs says. And there you have it. You basically get the idea. Couple things I do notice, though. First of all, this crowd is not a small crowd at all. You know, I know that's probably going to be the average left-wing cope about all of this, but that's hundreds of kids easily. I don't know how big this high school is, but anywhere you can get hundreds of kids in high school to care enough about a political cause to walk out and make signs and do all of this stuff certainly means something, certainly tells you this is not a small minority cause, at least at this school, by any means. But with that said, let's talk about the bigger picture here, which is that, folks, I genuinely believe, in fact, I would argue I almost genuinely know that the tides are turning for conservatism with younger generations, that all hope is not lost. Although I understand a lot of older people believe that, and I know why they believe that. I'm saying this legitimately. I don't believe all hope is lost when it comes to young people and the future of this country. Now, let me be clear about who I am and where that is coming from when I say this, okay? Obviously, I'm a Gen Z man. I'm a Gen Z conservative. I'm a junior in college. But I'm not saying this from the perspective of some paid Republican activist who is just going to be a Fox News contributor and just goes on to read the same script about how, Laura, let me tell you about Gen Z, blah, blah, blah. That's not where this is coming from at all. I'm not just trying to run cover or propaganda for the GOP by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I grew up as a high schooler myself thinking the same exact things that most older conservatives think about Gen Z. The reason I'm bringing that up is because in the past few years, I am seeing a genuine cultural and political shift within our generation, and especially within young men. I mean, even this video, you take a look here. Obviously, the issue is over, you know, technically it's over quote unquote girls' rights, right? It's over boys in the girls' bathroom. But you even notice the ratio here. There's a healthy amount of girls, obviously, and shout out to all the girls, but most of the crowd, as you can tell, is male. Well, that actually backs up. Keep in mind this is not an anecdotal thing. You might think that, oh, Vince, well, your friends are conservative. Oh, well, Vince, this is one video. This backs up the polls that we've shown, the data we've shown on this subject over the past few months, right? That University of Michigan poll, go look it up, that shows that, yes, they polled 12th grade girls and 12th grade boys. So yes, 12th grade girls, as you can kind of see anecdotally on the ground, were overwhelmingly liberal by this poll. But what it also found, what you're seeing in this video, what you saw in that street video I did at my own college a couple weeks ago, where I asked people about Donald Trump, and there's a bunch of drunk college guys coming up like, F Joe Biden, I effing love Trump. Like 90% of them, I kid you not, are all saying the same thing. You see the data, you see my street videos I do at my school, you're seeing this here in the high schoolers. Folks, there is something legitimately happening here, and I don't think it should be underestimated and forgotten. And I think what you're also seeing this especially happen in is the younger ends of the young generations, right? In my street videos that I did, most of those guys, I will tell you this as a matter of fact, most of those guys were freshmen because it was like the first week of school. Most of the people who go out that first night are freshmen. Those were all freshmen saying F Joe Biden. These are high school kids. And you may say, but Vince, this is probably a rural part of Pennsylvania. You go to school in Florida. What does that mean? Well, I will also tell you this, which is that a couple weeks ago, I got a message from someone who went to my high school, right? He's a 12th grader now. He's a senior, okay? And obviously, 3 years ago, when I graduated, as you could imagine, in Southern California, in Los Angeles, the culture of the school was pretty liberal. I got a lot of problems. As some of you know, the leftists at that school infamously tried to strip away my valedictorian speech. It was all this drama, blah, blah, blah. Understandable. California high school, what do you expect? Well, I got a message a couple weeks ago from a kid who's there telling me that now there's been a huge cultural shift at that school where it's actually a pretty conservative culture. Obviously, all the guys are pretty conservative. Even a lot of the teachers who back when I was in high school didn't really say much about politics. Now they're pretty out in the open, ridiculing the woke, ridiculing California politics, all of that stuff. And this is even where I went to high school. So folks, I don't think this is something that you can write off. And like I said, I think this is something you're especially seeing on the younger end of Gen Z and getting into Gen Alpha, the next generation. Of course, your question is probably, why is that? Why is it that these younger kids seem to be more high energy, more rambunctious, but kind of in a sense, chaotically and rambunctiously right wing? I'll tell you why that is. But first, let's talk about your financial future. Folks, the US dollar is in trouble, and I don't need to tell you that. But what you may not know is that it goes much deeper than the current inflation. Right now, there's a worldwide movement by the BRICS nations, this is your Russia-China axis, to divest from the US dollar as the global reserve currency in favor of their own gold-backed currency. And if this happens, this means we are going to be in even worse trouble. Some economists have predicted it may be a worse situation than the Great Depression, and that's why it's never been a better time to divest from the US dollar yourself by investing in precious metals. And our friends today over at Noble Gold Investments can help you do that. They will walk you through all the best ways given your current financial situation. For instance, you can convert an existing IRA into a gold IRA, or if you got some spare cash and just want to buy a couple $100,000 worth of gold, they can do all of that. Noble Gold deals only with physical gold and silver, so you're not getting any stock price or whatever or certificate. You will get the physical gold and silver, so be sure to go check them out at thevincedao.com. Again, that is thevincedao.com. Or if you want to contact them directly, be sure to give them a call at 877-646-5347. Don't wait. Check out our friends over at Noble Gold. I'm calling this the brick in the wall hypothesis. That's a reference to a Pink Floyd song that some of you may be familiar with. That's kind of about this, right? Which is that I think in many ways, being right wing, and I say this again as someone who's Gen Z myself, being right wing has become something of a teenage rebellion for a lot of kids. Because in the past, obviously, You know, the past generations, their teenage rebellion was a liberal thing when the country used to be more conservative. So during the 1960s, with Vietnam and all that, you know the story here. Well, now because the country institutionally is very liberal, very left wing, now kind of the rebellion against that is conservative. But I think it goes much deeper than that, which is that the kids who you're now seeing in these high schoolers and freshmen at my college right now, people forget this too. They had to deal with the COVID lockdowns in the middle of their education. And I think there's just something that did to a lot of kids that just changed everything for them. I don't know what it is. I can't exactly put a finger on it, but you can kind of just tell, right? Because obviously I had to deal with COVID lockdowns, but I was a senior in high school. So it's a little different. You know, you're almost done and then it's like a free vacation for the rest of the time. It is what it is. But imagine being in, say, 8th or 9th grade, right? Right in the middle of COVID. And then you have to stop in the middle of your education and then just start up and continue again. There was something about that I don't know, flip the table over. And I mean that quite literally, because if you look at the videos from that time, right, when kids got back to school, they were nuts, right? They were full of energy. Remember, they were stealing like urinals and all this crazy stuff, all this just teenage chaos. And at the time, you just thought, okay, these stupid kids, look at them. But imagine now, you think about it a little bit deeper. What was that moment of teenage angst or teenage rebellion? In the overwhelming majority of cases, it's a, nominally anti-woke or anti-liberal boy rebelling against a liberal teacher, right? That's kind of in many ways what is going on now, okay? And I think back to those COVID lockdowns and how bad we say they were. And obviously, they were terrible for a lot of kids. But in many ways, I'm starting to get a feeling that it was also something of a wake-up call for a lot of kids. Or I don't know if it was just a transformational experience. Because I even think back to the origins. Remember 2021, the F Joe Biden chant? Remember how they were chanting that at all the sporting events? People forget where that came from. That didn't come from NASCAR. That didn't come from just some like right-wing demographic thing. That came from, if I'm not mistaken, the week 1 Virginia Tech college football game. And it started because the student section started that chant. Remember that video? That all started from Virginia Tech, I believe it was Virginia Tech or South Carolina, one of those schools, chanting F Joe Biden. Why were they chanting F Joe Biden? People might not understand why that was. Obviously, Biden is a bad president, and a lot of these just young dudes don't like him because, again, like I said, and people don't understand, a lot of young dudes, although they don't vote, they are conservative. But there was actually a deeper reason for that. The reason why they were chanting F Joe Biden is because everyone, and I know this because, I that was my freshman year of college too. Everyone was so happy to be back, to be in full stadiums, full parties, regular college and all of that stuff. And they knew that kind of Fauci and Biden were the symbols of masks and the symbol of lockdowns, that the moment that they were able to get all that lifted and they were back, the immediate energy was F Joe Biden. Right? That's what those chants were about at those colleges. It was basically saying, yeah, Biden, you don't want us to be at these sports games. You tried to lock us down. We're back now and it's a big party. So middle finger, F you. That's what it was really about. That's what it was really about. And so I've been thinking about all this in my head and kind of the way in which, in many ways, rebelling against, obviously COVID lockdowns were a thing. I also think in many ways, rebelling against your teachers nowadays is something of a right-wing thing because of how liberal the teachers are. And I boiled it all down, folks, to, again, this is what I call the brick in the wall hypothesis. And as we close out this video, I want you guys to give me your thoughts on this, which is what in Gen Z, especially like specifically for young people, if you're conservative or you're liberal, why is that? And I tweeted this out today, and I want to see what my fellow Gen Zers, especially who watch the channel, think of this. Check this out. I said, the defining characteristic of Gen Z is whether you rebelled against your parents or rebelled against your teachers. Think about that again for a moment. The defining characteristic of the young generation is about whether you rebelled against your parents versus your teachers. I go on to say, and this is very true, the left-wing kids hate their parents but adore their teachers. This is something I always noticed growing up. I never consciously noticed it, but I've been sitting around kind of philosopher mode thinking about this, and you realize this, right? Every single one of those crazy blue-haired feminists with the million piercings and the crazy hair, all of them hate their fathers, right? This is a universal fact. Most of them have problems with their parents. They don't like their fathers, but you always notice at school, I always noticed they made friends with all the liberal teachers, right? They love their teachers. They bought all of the Kool-Aid they were taught in school about left-wing nonsense. And because of it, very often the archetype is they have a conservative parent, and if not even conservative, just a slightly more traditional parent who doesn't approve of their entire crazy rainbow lifestyle. And because of it, it makes them very left-wing, and that's sort of what they're rebelling against, right? Because they think, oh, I'm an edgy goth, crazy feminist, I'm a teenage rebel. Well, you're not rebelling against the system because the system wants you to be that. You're not rebelling against education because education wants you to be that. What are you rebelling against fundamentally? Whereas on the other hand, and I pointed this out too, and think about how true this is. The right-wing kids love their parents, but cause problems with their teachers. Think about that for a moment. Think about that. Because naturally, just being right-wing in public school these days is going to cause you problems with your teachers anyway. But I think back even earlier. Think about the stereotype of the boy with ADHD, right? The school system says he's a menace. He can't pay attention. He has too much energy. And very interesting, right? A boy with too much energy. The school system doesn't like that. The school system doesn't like a boy with a lot of young male energy. But their parents, right? Usually those boys have very good parents. Even right-wing kids with left-wing parents, I find very often don't have serious problems with their parents. Maybe it's a slight point of awkward conversation. But, whereas on the other hand, left-wing kids most of the time really have daddy issues and serious problems with their parents. This is what's going on in our generation. So I'll tie this together because I know this video may be like spotty thinking all over the place. Tying this all together, I think the reason you're starting to see a shift that you're seeing in the polls, videos like this, all of this among Gen Z is that not every kid naturally in any generation hates their parents. Now, the school system wants to turn you against your parents, hence why, in many schools, if you want to be transgender, this is a real thing. If it's a thing in my school district where I grew up, right? If you want to identify as transgender and go by a different name at school, the school will hide that from your parents. They're not legally required to tell your parents stuff like that, right? The school system is trying to turn parents against their kids, or kids against their parents, I should say. Now, the kids who buy that and do that willingly, they're all the left-wingers. But now that it's going on and there's plenty of kids who love their parents and are not going to turn on their parents, notice what's happening there. Naturally, they're now becoming enemies of their teachers. And again, like I said, there's just something about that chaotic teenage rebel energy that you are now seeing in all these videos, in my videos, in the polls, translate to being conservative, especially a lot of young men being conservative because that crazy teenage testosterone and the way that a lot of, teachers and stuff have problems with that. See what's starting to happen? See the divergence? Folks, this is so true. Okay. Again, I call it the brick in the wall hypothesis. And it's another reason I say you're going to see a shift in Gen Z. You're already seeing it. Now it's just a matter of turning it into votes, but you're seeing a shift of Gen Z, especially Gen Z men, now turning more conservative. So with that said, folks, let me know what you think of all that in the comment section below. Do you think I'm just talking out of my rear end? Did this video even make sense? I don't know. It's probably the most scatterbrained video I've ever done, but very important points to be made here. Okay, very important points to be made here, truly. With that said, folks, be sure to check out our friends over at Noble Gold. And until next time, Alpha Moves only. God bless. Have a very good day and peace.